Geoffrey, and it is a huge pleasure of mine to be joining you. I am calling you. Apologies, everyone, for any of those technical difficulties. I've taken off the headset. So just to repeat, I just want to state what a privilege it is to be joining you today. I am joining the webinar from Johannesburg in South Africa, where I am based here with my family and use this as the launching pad for most of my work. And I do appreciate that we might have a global audience this afternoon, but just to express just a word of gratitude to Mile and the specific audience in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has a special place in my heart. Last year, I did some executive leadership coaching with various presidents and executives from the SABIC company and group. So it has a very special place in my heart, as I spent a lot of time online working with people last year. So as we start getting to this afternoon's topic, which is, do you think that leadership is everyone's business? I want to state from the outset is that I will be taking a stance and a vantage point on this topic with a belief that everyone can influence or affect a situation. So I'm a believer that everyone can make a significant difference. That doesn't mean that everyone will function as a CEO or a manager, but I believe that if those in the leadership and the management profession would sufficiently educate and empower their people, they will see their people making a significant difference in the context of their organization. The slides and the material that we'll be covering this afternoon come from the book and the work, The Leadership Challenge, which was written by two extraordinary gentlemen, James Kouzes and Barry Posner. Now, just to give you some of the context and the background of the work that they delivered, they first conducted their research 35 years ago in the San Francisco area, but that research has continued for 35 years and has had a global imprint, and they have seen that the results that came out of their initial survey have been confirmed in a global context. What they did initially when they set out to do their research, they asked the leaders of various organizations, what were you doing when you were delivering your personal best? So when you were delivering a project or leading an organization, please tell us, what were your behaviors? What were your practices? What were you doing that made you excel in that endeavor or on that project? And just to give you further context to the scenario in which they were researching, they were not just researching companies, they were researching educators, people in non-government organizations, even some successful academics and sports coaches. And they were fascinated by this extraordinary subject of leadership and wondering, what was it that people were practicing? What were they doing that was leading to extraordinary results? So in our time together, we're going to be covering these 5 major practices, and I'll be touching on those. We're about to go ahead with the further detail on the slideshow, and there's a fair amount of content. You might want to do some screenshots or photograph the slides at some point, but let me launch ahead into what the first practice is. They discovered that extraordinary leaders model the way. Now, just to tune into this topic for a few minutes, I want you just to contemplate and think for yourself, which leader have you worked with that has made a major influence on you? And what were some of their characteristics that you really admire? Titles are granted and bestowed, but it's not your title that wins you respect. Your behavior does. You should never ask anyone to do anything that you're not willing to do first. Leaders go first. They set an example and build commitment through simple daily acts that create progress and momentum. Leaders model the way through personal example and dedicated execution. I was once fascinated to read the story of a hardware chain in the United States of America. And they stated to the company that one of their core values was family, and they wanted to ensure that their employees could maintain a family life. So what they did on their public holidays or bank holidays is a few days preceding these days when their stores would be open, the managers would refresh their skills on the tills so that they could check out various customers, and they would take over the place of various tellers on those days so that those tellers could actually be on leave on that public or bank holiday and spend time with their families. So this company didn't just state that family was important. The managers went the extra mile to ensure that they created opportunities for their employees to have extended time with their families. You see, as leaders, we don't want to have reluctant followers. We want our employees and team to be engaged. In the advert for this webinar, I stated that there is a chemistry that takes place between the leader and the follower. And one of the foundational aspects, or one of the core ingredients in there being the right chemical reaction there, is that the leader lives a lifestyle that is respected by the follower. And there's a chemistry because the follower is not reluctantly pursuing and following the leadership of those in charge, but actually they are pulled forward through their example. I'm currently doing some consulting and some leadership coaching within a financial firm in South Africa. And they are doing a significant cutback exercise. But what was previously a conducive, relational sort of family fabric in this large company of a few thousand people has become very hostile. And many of the people that I'm working with and coaching are just having tremendous difficulty being involved in the current culture that is pervading in the organization. Some of them have been appointed to new positions that includes a promotion, but a few months have gone by and the people have not received their new promised salaries or the new benefits. So this company that is wanting to cut back on costs is actually being counterproductive, because the very people that they are supposedly honoring and rewarding with the promotion are actually taking enormous strain and finding great difficulty in the fact that they are not getting the promised benefits that were conveyed to them. So when it comes to modeling the way, you first have to ask yourself, what is it that I'm actually modeling? So you have to be sure of your own values, what you stand for, what you believe in, what you hold dearest to your heart. And I want to say to you that it's out of those values that your voice emerges and comes, and your voice becomes clearer and stronger and more influential if there is a synergy and there is a mirroring and a congruency between what you state your values are and what your actual behavior is. And then upon you discovering what your own values are and articulating and living those, it's when a leader is able to tap into the shared values that people start saying, well, let's build something together because we share some common values. And it is very difficult for others to willingly follow your lead if you're not clear about your own values or beliefs or where you are heading. So modeling the way talks about clarifying your values by finding your voice and affirming shared values, and also about setting the example by aligning actions with shared values. So ask yourself the question this afternoon, what am I modeling? Possibly just reflect on that for about 20 seconds. What am I modeling? So the first practice that the research concluded on is that extraordinary leaders model the way. The next practice that emerged out of the research is that exemplary leaders inspire a shared vision. Many books, many articles written on leadership in the last 2 or 3 decades have correctly identified that vision is a very necessary aspect when it comes to dynamic leadership. I want you to think right now where you're sitting, point to the direction that is north. You might well be familiar with where north is. You are sitting in your office or you're sitting in your home office, but sometimes when you're in a foreign city undergoing training or you have not yet got your bearings, when you ask the question, where is north, a question mark comes to mind because one is not essentially sure where north is. Like explorers, leaders have their skills and experience to prepare them. Leaders look forward to the future. They gaze across the horizon of time, imagining the opportunities that are in store once they and their constituents arrive at their destination. They have a sense of purpose and a desire to change the way things are. Their clear vision of the future pulls them forward. They communicate their passion through vivid language and expressive style. A vision is an ideal and unique image of the future for the common good. For our purposes today, I want to underline the word common good. As we look across the global political spectrum, as we look at company leadership and different people leading various organizations in the world today, some leaders are building an empire just for themselves, or they're a charismatic leader that are attracting followers, but they're not necessarily building for the common good. And there's a significant difference between someone who is a visionary just for their own benefit and they employ or they gather many people around them just to achieve what they want to achieve with their lives. And there's something significantly different about a leader who's able to tap into the common good. When it comes to the different behaviors around this practice of inspiring a shared vision, leaders envision the future by imagining exciting and ennobling possibilities. And they also enlist others in a common vision by appealing to shared aspirations. To enlist people in a vision, as a leader, you need to know your constituents and speak their language. People must believe that their leader understands their needs and has their interests at heart. Only through an intimate knowledge of their dreams, hopes, and aspirations, and visions and values are you able to enlist support. Leadership is a dialogue and not a monologue. Just meditate on that statement for a moment. Leadership is a dialogue and not a monologue. I was once intrigued to read about a CEO heading up a shipbuilding company in Korea. And every single morning, he would go and have breakfast with some of the workmen, some of the welders, those who were working at the real coalface of the shipbuilding industry. And he would go and have breakfast with them down near the docks. And he would ask them about their families and their lives. And he would put on that human side of leadership and draw close to them. He connected with them at a very sincere and a very real level. Leadership is a dialogue and not just a monologue. So when they were receiving instructions from their CEO, they knew him as a human being, as a person, not someone who was aloof or distant. If we consider the leadership of Martin Luther King on this extraordinary day in Washington, D.C., if you study the words in the speech, "I have a dream," you'll see that there's a transition point a little way into the speech, and he transitions from saying that I have a dream to the words, we have a dream. So some have described a true visionary leader as someone who actually holds up a mirror to the people that he is leading. And in that mirror, he's actually holding up their aspirations, their hopes, their dreams. And actually, he is giving voice to those. So it's not just about having a vision, but is that a shared vision? Are you a true voice of the people? And do the people really resonate because the place that you're leading them to touches the deepest values and aspirations of their own lives? Let's reflect on that for a minute. Am I articulating a shared vision? As I remind us of the webinar topic today, is leadership everyone's business? I am drawing attention to some research that has stood the test of 35 years, is not just true of the Western world, but has been used in the Middle East, in Asia, in Africa, in South America, in Australasia. These practices are things that one can meditate on and can practically apply to your environment, to your workspace, to your nonprofit, to your sporting or academic environment where you are expressing leadership. And these are the practices that form basically a simple framework of 5 points that I'm confident that no matter what position you are in your organization, if you contemplate and think about these and put them into practice, that you will see that you will get some traction and it will bring about some influence in the organization. So our first 2 points have been modeling the way and then inspiring a shared vision. The next one is that a leader or someone who is showing leadership traits challenges the process. The vision is what we're going to achieve. The process talks about the how. How are we going to go about achieving that? I want you to just think about, if you're calling in from Saudi or wherever you are in the world, in what way have your leaders challenged the status quo? Think of a few examples of people who have stand and challenged the status quo. I'm not sure if you are familiar with the name Tony Faddle. It is likely that many of you are not familiar with him as a person, but when I explain the work that he has done, I'm sure that everyone will be able to recognize the contribution that he has made during the last 20 years to our world. Tony Fadell is actually the father of the iPod. And the story goes this, that before Apple employed him to build their first hard disk music player, there were other corporations, I believe it was Philips, if I remembered correctly, and some others, who actually turned down the opportunity. But Tony Fadell thought outside of the box. He was thinking of a way in which music could be loaded onto a hard disk player. And in fact, as Apple got ready to launch the iPod, coming up for some 20 years ago, they built iTunes in the background to have the platform through which there could be the downloading of this music to make it accessible to us. Tony Fadell was someone who challenged the process, challenged the way things are done. Great leaders are great learners. They know that risk-taking involves mistakes and failure, so they treat the inevitable disappointments as learning opportunities. They're willing to take risks and experiment in order to find new and better ways of doing things. Leaders also create a safe environment in which others can learn from their failures as well as their successes. We are living in an age of disruption, whether that is taking place in the world of technology. I'm not sure what the context is in the city where you are based, but in South Africa, the Uber taxi industry has disrupted our taxi industry significantly in the last 2 or 3 years. And there are other shifts and changes constantly happening in other places. So as a leader, I need to be asking myself the question, how do I create an environment in which innovation and experimentation takes place? Are people punished if they launch out on a new way and a new approach of doing things? Are they pushed down? Are they reprimanded? Or do you create an incubator and possibly a safe place within the context of that shared vision where you can launch out and people can experiment? And those experiments can be small and they don't have to impact the financial side of the company yet. But that leader who is endeavoring to challenge the process creates an environment in which experiments can take place. I always chuckle to myself and laugh when I am reminded about the story of when blue jeans or denim jeans first came into existence. I'm not sure if you've read the story before, but the story goes that Levi Strauss was running a trading store on the West Coast. His brother had been running a trading store on the East Coast of America. And then with the mining and the gold rush on the West Coast, Levi Strauss headed west and he set up a store that mainly catered for the miners. The miners were complaining that the trousers or the pants that they were working in were constantly just wearing out because the fabric was not strong enough to cope with the conditions. While Levi Strauss was waiting for a new shipment of trousers or pants to come in, he had an ingenious idea. What they were doing at that time is that they would sell a certain type of cloth called denim. It came from France and it was blue like the denim jeans that we wear today. And this was mainly used to cover wagons or used for much larger projects. And he looked at this cloth and he said, possibly we could make trousers or pants out of this cloth to aid us in this time. He made sample of that. And the miners became very enthused by the new development because they were much stronger and resilient. And that was the origin or the coming about of the denim jeans. And I wonder what possible ideas that you are possibly sitting on right now, or people in your organization would love to run with if the environment was built for them to have a learning laboratory. The question I want to ask you is, are disruptors able to stay within your organization? Disruptors are people who paint outside of the lines. They think differently. They have the wild and new decision. And would they face high levels of frustration under your leadership? So they get to the point where they have to break out of the organization to go and give expression to their creative spirit and flair? Or are you able to create a place for them to gain that expression? I know that if you are working for Google, and some of you might work for Google, that you are able to work on a project at any point in time with a percentage of your time where you're just developing something new. I know of other software developers in Australia who dedicate a day every number of weeks where people can just experiment and paint outside the lines and come up with new and innovative ideas. So they create an environment in which new thinking can take place. So in terms of challenging the process, these leaders or influencers search for opportunities by seizing the initiative and looking outward for innovative ways to improve. And they experiment and take risks by constantly generating small wins and learning from experience. Let me underline in that second statement the word small wins. New experiments can be incremental, they can be step by step. A new experiment doesn't need to go straight to market, but people can experiment inch by inch, and inches make up feet that ultimately make up miles. So in the context of shared vision and values, we need to look for new ideas outside the boundaries of the organization. Take incremental steps in applying new and innovative solutions, and create a climate in which people are willing to take risks and learn from mistakes. Why don't you just ponder for a minute on whether you are challenging the process or creating a safe place for others to challenge the process. So just to recap, our three practices of extraordinary leaders, or those who are not necessarily in a position of leadership but influence an organization. They model the way, they inspire a shared vision, and they challenge the process. Now for the fourth point, they enable others to act. I want you to think of a time when you really felt powerful as a result of what someone said and did. A time when you felt powerful. Now, to contrast that, can you think of a time that you felt powerless as a result of what someone or a leader said and did? There's a connection between productivity and morale and how powerful or empowered people feel. Shortly after our webinar today, I will be taking our 17-year-old son for another driving lesson. In South Africa, you can get your car driver's license at the age of 18. And in these months leading up to his 18th birthday, I want to be empowering him so that he is able to drive effectively on our roads in South Africa. As a father, I don't delight in him not being equipped with that skill or that acumen or that insight or that responsibility, but I delight in seeing his growth and his progress. Sadly, as leaders, sometimes we're guilty of holding our employees or our teams back. We are not sufficiently empowering of them. So behaviors that make people feel powerful are enabling. But those that make people feel powerless are disabling. Feeling powerful is likely to bring the best out of the people when they feel most powerful, and they'll be most committed and energized for performance. Making people feel capable and valuable is at the heart and is an essential ingredient in people's willingness to take risks and drive extraordinary results. Are we making people feel powerful? Are we encouraging them to a point that they step out with new levels of confidence? An extraordinary leader enables others to act and empowers them. A grand dream doesn't become significant reality through the actions of a single leader. Leadership is a team effort. Leaders enable others to act not by hoarding the power, but by giving it away. When people have discretion, authority, and information, they're likely to use these resources to produce extraordinary results. Leaders know that no one does his or her best when feeling weak, incompetent, or alienated. They know that those who are expected to produce results must feel a sense of ownership. When it comes to empowering, I want to drop back to the third sentence in this slide, when people have discretion, authority, and information. So empowering isn't just giving people the authority to go ahead without the training, without the insight, without developing the discretion or giving certain information, but in a context where information is being shared and people are being developed into wise and smart decision making. It is a very empowering exercise. And just to state that a leader is most powerful when he is, with wise discretion, giving power and influence away so that great team results can be achieved. Looking at some of the behaviors that make up this practice, need to foster collaboration by building trust and facilitating relationships, and strengthen others by increasing self-determination and developing competence. It's important to bring in the aspect here of shared goals and shared roles. These bind people together in a collaborative pursuits. Some of the initial remarks on this point stated that people alone don't achieve extraordinary things. So when we are dividing up tasks, the more that we can overlap certain things and cause people to have to function and work collaboratively and in great cooperation with one another, it strengthens that teamwork and enables people to act in a much greater way. Leaders should think about what they can do to foster collaboration in a given situation and how they can structure the situation so that each member of the team can contribute to the success so that no one wins unless everyone wins. Extraordinary leaders put the fourth practice into play, and that is they enable others to act. If you could just read that for yourself, or hopefully some of these thoughts are just stimulating ideas for you to take back to your own environment and context. Let's reflect once again. We are now coming to the fifth and final practice, and I'll just be speaking for a few more minutes, and then we will open the webinar to some questions and interaction. But the final thing or practice that extraordinary leaders do is they encourage the heart. Kouzes and Posner, when they were doing this research, they saw that something very special resided in the heart of these leaders. They love to see the success of those in their employ, those who were in their teams. But in fact, in their writings, and I encourage you to get a hold of a copy of the Leadership Challenge, it says that a leader who sees extraordinary things done actually loves their people. And they realize that the heart of the person or the people that are following them needs to be constantly encouraged and nurtured and fueled. I want you to think about a time and think about one of the most meaningful recognitions you have ever received. It could be related to any part of your life. It could be within the family context, school, or community. What was that recognition, and why did you receive it? And why was it so meaningful to you? Think of a recognition. The climb to the top is arduous and long. People become exhausted, frustrated, and disenchanted. They're often tempted to give up. Leaders encourage the heart so that their constituents carry on. If people observe a charlatan making noisy pretenses, they turn away. But seeing genuine acts of caring uplifts the spirit and draws people forward. To keep hope and determination alive, leaders show genuine appreciation for individual excellence. They express pride in the accomplishment of their team, and they make everyone feel like everyday heroes. Encouraging the heart has to do with recognizing contributions by showing appreciation for individual excellence and celebrating the values and victories by creating a spirit of community. Let's get really practical here and see how this can take place. Firstly, expect the best. When you talk to people who are following you in such a way that you believe in them, that you're expecting them to produce amazing results, and you raise expectations, a self-belief begins to grow in them because they see you, the leader, expecting something from them, and they often rise to that challenge and rise to what you believe that they can do. So when you expect the best, you lift people's hearts and you lift their spirits. Personalized recognition. So leaders pay attention to remarkable achievements, and they point out to people where they have made a difference, where they have made a significant contribution. You might have read some of the work of Patrick Lencioni, and he writes on the subject of employee engagement. And he says there are three things that keep employees disengaged. That's anonymity, irrelevance, and immeasurement. Anonymity is that you're not really known as an individual. Unlike that Korean shipbuilding CEO I told you about, he took a personal interest in those shipbuilders. Irrelevance talks about the question that people say or often feel, am I making a meaningful contribution to the company's objectives? And measurement is, can it be measured, my contribution? So a leader who is encouraging the heart catches people doing something right. They personalize that recognition, and they point out where someone has succeeded. But it's not just individual recognition, it's also creating a spirit of community. So it's team recognition, not just recognizing individuals, but honoring work teams, honoring departments, different sections of the company, and commenting on how their collaborative and their combined effort achieved something extraordinary. It's really important to get personally involved. Last year, I was on a coaching assignment at one of our major banks, and I was coaching the person who was reporting into the CEO. And it was the time for that annual review where people were getting bonuses. Some of them were getting salary increases, and some, because it was a discretionary bonus, were not getting bonuses. And the CEO did not make those calls to their top 12 or so people personally. He delegated it to the person reporting to them. I feel that he missed out on a major opportunity to personally thank people, to encourage them, to publish and tell them the good news of a bonus or a promotion they'd received. And also, if it was difficult news that had to be conveyed pertaining to them not getting a bonus or a promotion, I think it's also important that leaders have those conversations. I've wrapped up on my fifth point there now, and just before we conclude, the practices that I believe if you put into play will influence your environment are modeling the way, inspiring a shared vision, challenging the process, enabling people to act, and encouraging the heart. Thank you to those who have taken up their valuable time to listen. And Mr. Jaffrey, I'm going to hand back to you at this time as we get into the next section of the webinar.
All right, thank you very much for a very, very interesting webinar, Mr. Shippey. And folks, we are now open for question and answers. So if you have any questions, you could either insert into the question box, or you could equally raise your hand. There's a hand icon available on the console. Please click on it if you want to speak directly with the speaker. Let me go to the question. There are a couple of them already posted in the box. As a manager, how do I get my employees to be more engaged?
That is a very good question. I'm going to go back to what I just stated a few minutes ago. And in fact, let me go even further back. Is the vision a shared vision? Or said differently, as a manager, have you taken that larger vision that is maybe being pursued by the whole company and showed the individual the contribution they are making? Some of us might be able to relate to maybe the metaphor of soccer. So a soccer coach describes to his goalkeeper and his midfield and his strikers exactly what he's expecting of them. So often someone is more engaged when they know what is expected of them and they can see how they are contributing towards that overall objective of the team.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There's another one. In your view, Mr. Shippey, what are the main reasons for leaders not to be able to clearly and effectively communicate the vision from top to bottom?
When it comes to the shared vision, let me speak about a South African context. Very often a vision is generated by the owner or the founder, or maybe the exco, the top people in the company. But very often that is not cascaded down like a waterfall into all different sections. So my wife does some work for one of our mining companies, and what they are doing is they're using other forms of communication to get the vision across, because you have many people mining, drilling for gold underground, and then you have people in offices sitting in the mine, and they're trying to make this connection between the miner themselves literally at the rock face and those in administrative positions. So they are using metaphor, they are using a lot of visual posters and pictures, so that we're not just capturing vision in terms of a vision statement and maybe our values, but they are putting posters and pictures up portraying different ways that it can take place. But it's essential that people at every level of your organization can explain the objective. Those are a few thoughts for now. Mr. Jaffrey,
thank you very much. There's another one from Mr. David Young. In fact, he's asking about what was the name of the 35-year study? Again, that you put in one of the slides, I guess.
So the book is called The Leadership Challenge by Kouzes and Posner, and it was the research that led to them writing that work. And I believe correctly, the 6th edition of the book has been published now. So it is Kouzes and Posner, that is Kouzes, Posner, Posner, the Leadership Challenge. That is the writing that has taken place over 35 years based on this research.
Thank you very much. There's another one. There's a lot of talk on innovation as a key to strategy and success. So what type of environment actually encourages innovation?
So just revisiting some of the thoughts we had on challenging the process, it's an environment where people can take risks. So there will not be harsh consequences of people thinking about something extraordinary and different and new. So people can practice blue sky thinking. So it is not restrictive thinking. But as I said, it doesn't have to have major economic consequences for the company. There can be laboratories created or simulated environments created. But I think it's got to do with that encouraging that spirit of entrepreneurship and different thinking, and not just being harsh and overly critical on ideas that seem to be non-conventional.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And well, that's about it. That really brings us towards the end of the webinar. Mr. Shippey, any quick concluding remarks that you would like to give before we dismiss that?
Just in conclusion, and going back to the title, do you think leadership is everyone's business? I want to state again, depending on the countries or the nations we work in, people occupy different positions, whether it's the president of an organization or a CEO. But I guess what I'm advocating today is leadership and influence are not just positional. It's not just about having a certain title. It's about really bringing about constructive change. And I just want to encourage you in your endeavors and encourage you that you can grow as a person and grow as a leader. So those are some concluding remarks from my side.
Well, thank you indeed, and thank you for your time. And I really want to thank you on behalf of the Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship for taking the time to deliver this live webinar through Miles platform. So once again, Mr. Iain Shippey, thank you very much.
It is a great pleasure to join you.
Same here, sir. And thank you all of those who participated in this webinar. We are recording it, so please stay tuned to webinar.mile.org to learn about our upcoming programs and to equally access the archive section. With that note, I would like to end and conclude. So you all have a good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling from. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much.